Yes. All right, guys. Well, welcome back to episode 3 of Insurance Isn't Boring. Really excited about this episode. We might go a little more Joe Rogan length with it because we've got a very special guest, my direct upline who brought me into the business, Mark Newbauer, and he's a legend inside of Symmetry. But for those of you who aren't in Symmetry, Mark has been with the company about a decade. He just hit the highest contract in the company last month. So we're very excited for him on that. And he's just a wealth of information and really excited to pick his brain a bit because Elijah and I are producers, right? I'm building a bit of a team. Mark has an entire army behind him, close to, what is it, like 500 agents now, Mark, in total?
Yeah, yeah, that's about
So,
right.
yeah, there he is. He's probably got agents blowing him up.
We definitely have over 100 active writing, consistent agents, day in and day out helping families.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess just to kick it off, give kind of our audience a little bit of background on you. Elijah and I have told them a little bit about us, but everyone's got their own story. No one grows up thinking they're going to be an insurance agent, and certainly not with the behemoth agency that you've got.
Oh,
What were you
tell
doing
me,
before?
say that
Yeah, what
again.
were you doing before Symmetry?
Uh,
And I would say, what was it about Symmetry Financial Group, or maybe just the insurance industry in general, that attracted you? Because you're a serial entrepreneur, been doing multiple businesses involved in different industries, even too. But what was it about Symmetry that brought you in? What were you doing prior?
Well, prior to this, and sorry I got distracted. I was messing with the backgrounds, and it won't let you change it once we're there. So I'm stuck with this. Um, I before this, I'm still doing what I was doing before this, so I'll start there.
Cool.
I've always had been passionate about the film and television industry, even theater, just the performing arts in general. And I have been building a film TV studio um, by my own sweat for, gosh, I hate to say it, but probably decades now.
Wow.
And yeah, it's just always been a passion. So it went from, acting to writing to producing to our current business model, which is really um, optioning rights to books and comic books. And then my producing partner and I, Rich Angel, we work together to develop these projects for screen, whether it's independently or in partnership with studios. And and this business is really, feast or famine.
Mm.
Uh, and it's mostly famine, and it's not it doesn't pay the bills. It requires investment, right? And until, and I won't say unless, and I'll just say until. So, you hit a feature or a big series, and great, it's all worth the while. And I do love the work, but again, it doesn't pay the bills. So there I was, just a grown man with a family. I love my wife Gula has been abundantly supportive through the years. My kids, Billy and Jacob, just amazing. As a parent, you want to do, and a spouse, you want to do anything and everything you can to just
Mm.
better the collective, and bring a beautiful life. And in retrospect, we can only say 2020 hindsight, but I was so focused on my passion that I feel like I knew I could do more, be more for my family. I was always present, emotionally and otherwise, as present as possible. But when you're, stressing financially, you can't really be present. There's always that subconscious math going on in the back of your head. Can we afford this? What groceries do we get? All that stuff. So I was really in a place before I found Symmetry where I was, to a fault, really focused on my passion. Um, and one day I just woke up and thought, I know I can do better for my family. I know I don't have to give up my passion in order to serve my family and my highest self. Um, but how? So I really asked, without getting too esoteric. I asked, I got quiet and I asked. Um, and then I heard one Steven Spielberg says, listen to the whispers, and I've heard Ed Milet talk about it quite a bit too. The
Yep.
whispers are
Yep.
really right. It's just your intuition. Call it what you will, but
Mhm.
if you can get quiet, you'll hear the whispers, and if you honor the whispers, they will lead you down the right path. And not only that, they will come more often and they will get louder. So I think my soul has always known who I am and what I need to be, but ego, human nature, all that stuff gets in the way. There's the earthly and the non-earthly, and it's always like you got to get it aligned. And I got to a point where that whisper spoke to me, and it said, at first, it just said, "Hey, I was at the gym." Elijah, I think you've heard this, but it's like I listen to music when I'm lifting weights. Why am I just listening to music? I could be learning another language. I could be doing all kinds of things while I work out. So I was on the treadmill. I looked up something on YouTube, and there was this Tony Robbins video, and it hit me really hard. It was just this slideshow of luxury images and lifestyles that anybody would would be thrilled with, and it was Tony's voice, and he just kept saying, "Someday, honey, someday." And that just kills you as someone who's a provider. Um, and it did. It just hit me so hard, just a punch in the gut. And I was like, okay, now I know I want something more. I can be something more. I started, that led to another Tony Robbins video where he talked about, I'll never forget this guy. He asked him, what's your favorite book? And Tony Robbins goes, well, I can't name a favorite book. Like, there's so many. It's like asking me my favorite movie. Like, I'll never give you that answer. Can't. But um, but then he backed up and he said, well, wait a minute. If I had to choose a book, I would say everybody needs to read As a Man Thinketh by James P. Allen, right? And for movies, I'd probably say Back to the Future or Caddyshack. But back to serious stuff. Like, so I read it. I sought it out. It's public domain. You can get it right now. It's like 40 pages, right?
Yep. You can
Um,
read it now.
oh, and please do, because
Change your life.
it did. It blew the emoji with the brain exploding. That's what happened. And I thought, I don't know what I thought, but it resonated so deeply that I
Yeah.
knew I was turning a corner, and that the choice was up to me. I had to do something now. And lo and behold, I had always understood from friends of mine that do annuities and life insurance and Medicare and all the different things that we can do with our license. Um, they're always like, Newbauer, if you want to do your movie stuff, you should be doing insurance because it's lucrative and it's flexible.
Mm.
Two words I love, lucrative and flexible.
I
So,
think we all do.
right, those are very good words to live. So
Yep.
I looked on ZipRecruiter. I applied for about every life insurance thing I could find. Um, I thankfully was contacted by someone at Symmetry, and
When was
I
this, by the way? Not to interrupt you.
so
Do you remember the
Yeah.
month or the year?
oh, please interrupt me because Xander knows I'll just continue and continue. Um, and knitting and knitting. I'll um I'll be here 8 years last month. So this was in
Okay.
2016.
Okay.
Wow.
2016.
Hmm.
And
2016.
Elijah and I have done a little bit of establishing street cred
Mm.
at early on in the interviews, or I guess the podcast, to kind of
Yeah.
Hmm.
why should you listen to us? And
Yeah.
you've got a big bad agency. I'd love to hear like best month, average month, and then we can
Would you
get into some
do
of the.
yes to that, but also would you do what did your team do last week as well? One of the things Xander I ask is how much did we sell this week because it's Friday. You go, Mark, and then Xander will you and I will chime in and see what we sold this week too.
Okay, awesome. I love that. That's a great way to kick it off. Um, I will say our biggest, if I may, our biggest month so far was August of this year, and that throughout the master agency, that was $715,000 in APV.
It's a big number.
Good Lord.
Blows my
715
mind.
grand. Do you know how many applications or how many families that equates to?
Man, I
You
wish
could
I did.
ballpark it.
I wish I did. I would say, with 100 active writing agents,
I mean, it's over 500 apps, easy.
average is, yeah, exactly, 4 to 6 apps a piece. I'd say 750, probably 500 to
Hmm.
750 families.
Wow.
Um,
And
and
Mark,
then
are you still in the field too, if you don't mind my asking? Because for
I
the
am,
people out there, yeah, I think that is super valuable. We gotta
Yep.
dig into that too in a bit, Xander. So 715 grand in August, that's the biggest month ever. What are you guys doing like kind of on average weekly?
on average, well, monthly, so you do the math divided by four. On average,
Yeah.
we're doing about 325,000 a month and growing. And I'll get our weekly numbers from last week in just a sec here, but
Hmm.
between 300 and 400 a month now is average, which is pretty amazing. Like we're definitely
It's a pretty
The
big
train
average. Yeah.
train is moving. Train is moving. All right, Xander, what did
train
you
is
sell so
moving.
far this week?
I had another slower week. I'm at 6K as of today. I've
Still
got,
slow. You gotta
I
get those
know.
numbers up, man. Only 6 grand?
Serious.
I've got like, dude, we can get into this later too, but I had a couple this week where they were big, big policies. Like if I can land some of these, that could turn into 15, 20K for the week. I just got to get someone they got to talk to the wife, or there's one guy, I just need him to sign the freaking thing.
Hmm.
And, you know, that gets into like, I don't like to be super pushy. And the one thing I will say with and then I'll stop hogging the conch shell, as Mark likes to say, and turn it back to you, Elijah, um, is it's interesting in insurance, right? Because we're doing something that everybody needs, and we protect families. And so the whole pushy thing is interesting because I've heard this story time and time again of I got to think about it from somebody, and then life gets in the way, right? People procrastinate, they got busy lives, especially here around the holidays. And then thankfully this hasn't happened to me yet, but I've heard from multiple agents, they'll get a call 3, 6 months down the line from someone who says, hey, my husband just died and I don't know how we're going to keep the house. And like, thank God I haven't gotten that yet, because that would just start. That'd be a weird emotion, right? Like, should I have pushed harder? Like, if I had been a little pushier, maybe that family wouldn't be in that situation. They'd be in a better spot.
Hmm.
And so that's something that I'm constantly, trying to work on. Like, you don't want to be that slime ball salesman that we talked about in the first episode. But at the same time, we aren't selling, Jack and the Beanstalk beans here that have no value in someone's life, right? Like, this truly protects them and is going to make an impact on their family. So I guess to both of y'all, I'd ask how you think about that after Elijah. I'd love to hear. I think you had a big week this week too.
I'm at a decent week. I'm at $9,100 in premium.
Decent.
I wrote a fat one yesterday. I think it's on 7 applications, so not too shabby. I told
Wow.
myself 2 weeks ago. I think it was, what is today? Today's the 20th. I told myself at the end of it was Friday the 6th. At the end of the first week in December, I said if I can sell 25 grand in the next 2 weeks, I'm done for the year. And so today's my last day of the year, and I'm gonna come back in January. But
Good for
Mark,
you.
you've been in the game longer than me, man. How have you just to kind of piggyback on what Xander's talking about, because we do sell something super valuable, and
Yeah.
I've got several hundred clients. I've had several death claims. I have called a lead that they sent in the lead, and I called them, and it was between the time that they sent it in and when I called them that one of them died, and nobody got in touch with them. And so it can be tricky navigating sales where you don't want to be pushy and risk losing the sale, but you also see the value in what's going to happen if we don't do this. Mark, you've been selling longer than me, man. What has that been like for you? But I'm sure you've also had agents on your team deal with that you're kind of you're hearing about?
Yeah, I mean, I remember the most impactful thing. And by the way, for what it's worth, I think I did a little over 2,000 on my own pen last week.
Nice.
As you build, I mean, maybe I have no business being in the field at this point, but I love it, um, and it does allow me to really focus on the leadership part intentionally. So we did
Mm,
175,000 as a team last week.
nice.
So
That's not a bad
it's
week.
Very
power of
solid.
building, you know, and
That is
just
the
helping
power of building right there.
this opportunity. But to answer your question, yeah, I mean, I remember one of my first dial sessions, at least in my first 5, 6 weeks. I'll never forget. I was dialing what we call bonus leads, which I always tell new people is just polite for old leads. Um, so I'm sitting there dialing bonus leads, and I a woman answered. I said, "Hey, is George there?" And there was a pause, and then she just started crying. And I said, "Hey, is everything okay?" And she said, "Well, George passed away a few weeks ago, and nobody ever called us about this." So that was just, at first I was buying leads, dialing leads, right? Making sales. But after that call, I was obligating myself to families. When I invest in leads, I have obligated myself to that's those leads, each and every one as a family. I don't know who's gonna hang up. I don't know who's not interested, but I know somewhere in there is another version of George that I need to help so that someone else isn't calling another version of George's wife and having that happen. So it really, stuff like that really makes you understand how important it is what we do. I know
Yeah.
we did talk a little bit after, and a $10,000 final expense policy would have made all the difference in the world to her.
Yeah.
Dude,
Um,
dude. I think what you're describing is a realization I had early on in sales because I knew that if I was going to hitch my wagon to this company, because the vision that I was given about insurance is that it was a unique career path, and something that I think is important to a lot of people is doing something that's valuable. And if you're in sales, selling something that you can not only be passionate about, but I think more than anything, believe in. Like we're not selling used cars, nothing against that, but it's we're selling something that actually is going to have potentially generational impact on a family. We're not selling timeshares, we're not selling hair care products. Like what we're selling makes a real difference. And when I saw the value in that, I was like, it's not hard for me to believe in this and then have that conviction when I'm in the trenches, so to speak, of sales,
yeah,
because it is difficult. We do deal with more rejection than I would dare say any other industry, but there's a huge upside. And so you mentioned, Mark, when you first started talking, the flexibility and it being lucrative. And so those were, I would say, the two things that stood out about insurance. Was there anything in particular about symmetry that brought you? Because I think there's lots of different companies out there. They're all a little bit different. At the end of the day, we're all selling insurance. What was it about symmetry that made you pick this company? Because I think something that's unique about um, us is we didn't come here from another insurance IMO. I've been here all 6 years. You've been here the whole time. I think Xander, you almost joined another IMO, but this is the only one that you actually started working with.
yeah.
What was that about Symmetry, Mark?
Well, I discovered that, in the process of my first couple months. But what attracted me initially, surface level, um, was so tiny bit of quick backstory. When we back way before Symmetry, 10 years before Symmetry, I won't go any further back than that because then it's how old am I? What age am I? But before, and then right between you guys, it's just bad. Where's the filters here? But in 2006, that's the point where my younger son would call me Unc. He goes, "Dad, you're Unc status." um, we were pregnant with my first, Billy, and we So I needed just the best of the best. I was out in LA. Again, entertainment was my passion. I was about to go work at a studio and get and just take a super low paying studio entry level job, work my way up, and that's the journey there. Um, but then when we, became pregnant with our first, I thought that's not going to work. I mean, our first appointment was at a free clinic in Hollywood.
Mm,
I didn't know it was a methadone clinic or a place that you talk to doctors about babies, right? I mean,
yeah.
I was like, I can't, this isn't how we live. This is not what I signed up for, right? So, but it is what I signed up for. So by my actions. So I got my Series 7 and my 66. I went to UBS in Beverly Hills on Rodeo Drive. I passed a 6-hour interview process. They had psychologists calling you, like mock
Oh, wow.
calls. I mean, it was a crazy interview process, but I made it and I got my 7 and 66 and I thought, oh, great, I'm in the world of finance. And as glamorous as all that was for a hot minute, when it came to serving clients, hey, how do we get started? Who are we helping today? I mean, just there's a big fat phone book on your desk and they say, well, there it is. Go find your clients.
Oh, wow.
It was tough, dude, tough. So I became and the things we were recommending to people, we'd have different vendors coming in buying us breakfast burritos from this mutual fund company. So guess who we're going to be recommending to clients that day? I don't know if this is what I'd actually recommend to my mom and dad or anybody
Mm,
else, but hey, this is who came today. So let's talk about this to people. And by the way, find them in the phone book. So again, very disenchanting experience for me personally. That could be maybe I had blinders on, who knows? But that was my experience. Met a lot of great people. Still have some friends from that era. But again, disenchanting. So fast forward to Symmetry. Why I responded to that lead very quickly was it said no cold calling, right? Leads available. And
mm,
I know when I interview people, some people look at that as a cost
Yep.
and, oh, I have to pay for leads. No, you don't have to pay for leads. You can also dig through the phone book or talk to 6 people in your family until one of them says yes. I was
yeah.
thrilled to see in all caps, no cold calling.
Yeah.
And that is what was such a game changer for me from my previous dips, like dipping my toe into finance that was supposed to be lucrative and flexible, and found very quickly that it is very lucrative and flexible because I had a stack of families that asked for help.
Yeah.
Now, they may not want that help anymore. To your point, Elijah, we have way more rejection than we do yeses, but that one yes makes up for all the rejections, right? So I
And
got my
just
first direct deposit from American Amicable, and there 700 some dollars. There was no turning back after that. I saw just do
Yep.
it again and again and again.
It's funny, a couple things you said there, I actually had experiences with yesterday. So I had both an agent that I was interviewing to come on board, and he had the same experience. He had previously worked for an IMO. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but they were giving them free leads. And he was blown away that we were going to be investing in leads at Symmetry, and he could not wrap his head around that. He's like, I would rather cold call. I think to your point, Mark, he'd probably had some negative experiences
Hmm.
with those, and he was the first one to say, he's like, yeah, I didn't really like that. Like the leads were absolutely just washed, right, rinsed, as one of my agents refers to them. And then as a kind of follow on to that, I had a client I was helping, and she asked me a number of really good questions, but one was she had already talked to another agent about mortgage protection, and that agent, we can say names here, he was with Primerica, and she was very taken aback. She ended up saying to me, you don't seem sketchy. You seem like you know what you're talking about. This is not the cheapest price that I've been quoted for this, and I'm still going to go with you. And she told me the story of this agent with Primerica. She's like, it was kind of weird. He was like almost more trying to recruit me than he was trying to help me with the policy. And I explained to her, that's because you come on board with him, he's going to say, all right, give me your phone. I'm going to go through all your contacts, and then he's going to go sell them, and then have you recruit someone to go do the same. And that was the biggest thing to me about symmetry. And, we'll get into building in a second here, but there's no, Elijah is a great example, right? Number one producer in the entire Cook Master agency, doesn't have a single person on his team, right? Number one producer. So you don't have to go recruit your friends and family and go through their contact list to write business. And I think that is such a differentiator. And unfortunately, I think that's where the insurance agents or the insurance industry gets a lot of a bad rap, right? Like this lady was trying to get help, and this agent was trying to recruit her more than he was trying to help her. And
Right.
he ended up losing the sale because of that.
I think what you're describing, Xander, as far as like a bad reputation and leads and all this stuff, like what I think makes this company different, or the industry in general from the outside looking in, you have to understand that if you're going to become an insurance agent, you are becoming an entrepreneur. You're 1099, there's business expenses, and if that scares you, then you shouldn't become an entrepreneur. You should go get a job working somewhere. Because I looked at leads the same way, man. I was like, shoot, you guys have people asking for this. All I got to do is reach out to them and help them with what they're asking for. How many can I buy? And
Right.
if you structure it right, like we spend a decent amount on leads. We don't spend as much as other people. I've interviewed agents from other IMOs who are encouraged to drop $2,000 plus in a
Yeah.
week on leads as a
As a brand new agent. Yep.
as
I
a
know.
brand new agent.
That one.
Like you just got your insurance license, and even that is a big step for a lot of people. Hold on, you don't pay for my license? Nah, man, you got to have some skin in the game. And so, like, we can help you get started, but I mean, if you go get your real estate license, the brokerage ain't paying for it. So,
Right. Right.
anyways, I looked at it as a small expense to guarantee consistency because Primerica is a great example. They have over 20,000 licensed agents, but it's because they're not all active because they can't get profitable. You eventually, if the system is sell to all your friends and family, every birthday party and barbecue, and anybody you meet. I'll never forget. I was approached by someone in Primerica in a Whole Foods, and he started talking to me about passive income in a shifty fashion, and I was like, buddy, you got it backwards.
Got this.
But all that to say, typically if I'm spending 600, 800, $1,000 in a week on leads, that's covered by one sale typically,
Yep.
maybe two small ones. And so
Yeah.
it's a small expense to guarantee that you have a consistent stream of people who are vetted and are interested. All you got to do is the work to get them on your calendar and do the job, you know?
Right. Right. And
So Mark, or I don't mean to cut you off, Xander. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, we kind of talked about the production. Now I think anybody listening has a little bit better understanding. Like Mark's done the flashy, wealth management side of things. That wasn't really his cup of tea. I'd love to talk a little bit about building because it's been a pretty heavy on the production side up until this point. And, one of the things I was saying to Elijah that really resonated with me when we were at national conference was, I'm going to do a little bragging on you here for a sec, is, I was in a breakout with Jacob Pogue, who's another kind of titan inside of symmetry and the industry in general. And he said on the last day, he was like, if you want to be a good leader and you want to inspire people, you need to be someone that people aspire to be. And not to brown nose too much, but Mark, I think you're a perfect embodiment of that. And the best example I have is that last night that we were there, everyone was having a couple drinks, having a good time at the hotel, and you were outside the hotel making sure that the female agents who were multiple levels, right? Like their uplines were inside enjoying a cocktail, and you were outside walking them to their hotel, making sure that they got home safe. And that had a huge impact on me. That had a huge impact on one of my close friends in downline, Noah Dondero, as well as Luke Saderwaith. And I just, number one, how did you kind of begin to foster, how long did it take you to grow into that point where those are the kind of things you're thinking about? And have you found that that's helped? Like, we have a super high turnover rate in this industry, right? It's like 92% don't make it past the year or 2 year mark. How have you
Yep.
seen that play out? Yeah, I'll just kind of give it back to you.
First of all, thank you. That's an honor. I didn't realize that. But golden rule, treat others as you'd like to be treated. I
Yeah.
try to live by that. Um, I will say, we'll get into this because this is part of building, but if you don't mind me backing up a little bit, just a tiny bit, you guys asked what attracted me to Symmetry. First and
Yeah.
foremost, I said no cold calling, right?
Yeah.
But as what really makes us special is, because when it comes to leads, it's funny. You mentioned someone with free leads. I just saw something on Instagram the other day that was pretty funny. It said, a guy had a zoo. He charged, $500 to get in, and nobody came. So he relowered the price to $100. Still nobody came. So he's like, "This is a great zoo." Okay, fine, $20. Nobody is going to this zoo. I don't know why. So he made it free. And now everybody came to the zoo. It's free. Everybody's in the zoo. And then he locked the gates and let the lions out. And he said, "Hey, it's $500 to get out." Right? So, lesson learned, nothing is free. And I just love that story because it was like, that's what free is, right?
You
So
get what you pay for, or
you get what you
don't.
pay for. Absolutely. But what I found on the other side of no cold calling, and we'll get into this because I wanted to preface this because this is why I build so assertively and with confidence, is, if you're growing something, it, everybody knows it all depends on the soil in which it's growing, right? So life insurance is life insurance, but no two opportunities are the same because of the culture in each of the IMOs or companies that you decide to work for. And I truly believe we are outstanding, right? I'm not saying we're the best. FinTech Awards said we're the best. The Stevie
It's true.
Awards said we're the best.
Yep.
Entrepreneur Magazine says we're the best. And now Forbes Magazine says we're in the top 25 highest paying companies in the
Top
country
10.
or the world, right? The
Yeah.
country. So don't take my word for it, right? Forbes, Entrepreneur, Stevie. And the reason for that is our culture and the soil which our founders have created, in which we have a focus on personal growth and personal development, right? Work on yourself more than your business, and your business will take care of itself. That's
That's
our
good.
secret sauce. That's our secret sauce, right? So I just feel like I tell everybody, you guys have heard this ad nauseum, but I feel like this is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And if you if your whispers led you to apply at Symmetry, like, you have a golden ticket. But
Yep.
but that doesn't mean you win, right? You just want a trip to the factory. Now you've got to do the personal growth and open your ears and eyes, right? So that you're not Augustus Gloop getting sucked into a tube of purple stuff, or, Cruise a bulk, right? They one by one, they just drop like flies
Yeah.
because
Yep.
they didn't follow the system. It was very
Mm.
simple. If you watch that, it's very simple to get to the top of the chocolate factory, but most people don't listen, and most people want to do what most people want to do. But Charlie was just like, "What do I do? Where do I go? Oh, don't touch that. Okay, I won't." Right? It's that
Hmm.
simple.
Yeah.
So I guess I wanted to edify that first because it. Sure, we can give production tips all day to people, and I think especially you guys. I mean, you guys inspire me, right? I've never put up weeks like Elijah, and Xander, I think I'm at the point where I haven't put up weeks like you. I mean, in all honesty, and I love that. I love that because it just shows it doesn't matter so long as you know what you're going to be focusing on. So anyway, that's what has me exciting about building here. To your question, Xander, I'm just so naturally enthused to build an agency in this industry because I know it's lucrative. But what gives me the faith and the belief to build successfully is the culture that we are, blessed with inside of Symmetry, which is, it doesn't matter whose team you're on. If you're plugging in and working out loud, anybody here worth anything is going to bend over backwards to help you and reach
Yeah,
out and make sure that you're on the right path. And that's unique. I've interviewed
it's
over
rare.
1,000 people, and they can't believe it. People that have come from other shops sometimes are skeptical because they're like, "Why would you do that? What?
Yep.
Well, yeah, but what do you make? Nothing, dude. Like, I make karma. That's what I make, and that karma."
Yeah, and
You
that's
start,
rare for financial services too. Like my family's in financial services, and I say this on every new agent overview. The vast majority of the financial services industry step on your neck to make myself look better. Oh, I've got this many assets under management, and you want to relocate any of that? Oh, you just crossed a line, my friend.
Right.
And it's wild. Elijah and I have talked about this, but to a T. Anybody who sticks around at Symmetry, they're like, how can I help you? How can I help you get to where you're trying to get to? And like, I don't know where else you can find that. Maybe nowhere.
well, the opportunity in insurance is largely untapped. I mean, it's $1 trillion industry, and we're a drop in the bucket in
Yep.
comparison. And so the opportunity gets better, the company's valuation goes higher, more families are helped, the more people that are in here. And I think what makes the opportunity attractive uh, as a producer is, Mark, your success is directly tied to helping somebody else get what they want. You know,
Hmm.
people come here, maybe they just want to make an extra $500 a week, or an extra, maybe they're replacing a $10,000 a month income or more. You've helped not one, not two, not three, but numerous people who are on your team make over $100,000 in a year. You've interviewed tons of people, some of which are no longer with us because insurance isn't for everybody. But I think what you're describing is just our our culture is authentic. It's not, I'm recruiting something so I can get something from you. We don't have a sign up fee. You know, there's IMOs that make you pay to join their company. Literally, you have to pay an initiation fee before they'll hire you. Um, so let me ask you this: you're doing tons of interviews. You've probably got systems in place. I got a couple rapid fire questions for you. One, did you start building like right away, or did you wait a little bit, learn the ropes, and then start recruiting?
Well, again, I think if I have my vision board right next to me here, and
Nice.
one of the things cut out says lead with love, right? So
Mm.
that's how I build, that's how I live. Like it's love, 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 right? Without sounding too cheesy. And I started building from day one, and I had no idea you could build. And what I
Mm.
mean by that is I went out to um, I sewed, in the arts, and when people are in a band, for instance, right? Someone goes and gets a job, now you're a sellout, right? Everybody knows that cliche. So same thing in Hollywood, for lack of a better term. It's like if you compromise your dreams, now you're a sellout, right? So for me, I was definitely having some identity crisis as I was trying to figure out my financial issue, as an artist who is now going to be working this insurance like gross, right? So that's what everybody thinks, right? So I went out to the car in a rainstorm to do my interview because my buddy Steve was inside, Steve Devine, and we had a startup together that wasn't starting up. And I, just was like, I got to go out in my car and do this interview. I got to find something. So I did it.
He didn't know.
Steve didn't know. I wasn't hiding it from him. I was more hiding it from the world because here is Mark the filmmaker going to interview for insurance, right?
Yeah.
And very conflicting. So, but it sounded good and it sounded like a solution. So I walked in and I said, "Hey, buddy, I just interviewed for this thing. Do you want to do this with me? Like, do you want to get your license?" And he goes, "Sure." And I go, "Wait, I don't even know. I guess I should ask if you can." But it's not because they didn't talk about building on my interview. So I called back and said, "Hey, if my friend wants to do this, can he do it too?" And of course, they're elated, like, "Well, absolutely. You're building a team. Congratulations." And I said, "What does that mean?" And then they explained it. But, and then I've never stopped building since. But the point
Mm.
is, I wasn't thinking about building. I wasn't thinking about me. I didn't know there was an upside to building, financially or personally. I just knew that. my friend was in a similar boat as I was. And if it's good enough for me, I'm going to show it to people I care about. So sure enough, Steve and I signed up for the course the same day. We started together. He's still with us today, building his agency. And that's super, super meaningful to me. And honestly, I say if you're going to get into this business, you will exponentially grow speed wise and otherwise if you just bring a wingman, bring a friend.
Yep.
Because back then we were doing paper apps, driving into
Yep.
homes. I
Yep.
was so disorganized, and Steve is very organized, and he's like, no, no, we're supposed to order it from here, get these apps from here, and this, and he was physically shaking his first time on the phone. I did theater and improv, so phone didn't bother me. So we helped each other out big time,
Mm,
synergized in that way to the point where we both found success here. So
yeah.
that to me is the power of building, is being able to change somebody else's life in a way that this has changed mine, and that's always been at the forefront of every interview I've done. Xander knows it. There's no wrong way to do an interview if you're hitting all the highlights, but my interviews are not quick 10-minute things. Like I will, if I see someone with potential, we might be on for 30, 45 minutes, because if you're taking this opportunity for what it can be, this is a bold decision. I
Yeah.
Yeah.
don't want somebody just jumping into this and then, oh, sorry, didn't work out after, this or that. I need to know that they understand what some of the non-negotiables are if you're going to find success here. And if
Mhm.
I see any hesitancy or lack of belief or anything like that, I'm going to warn them accordingly, right? Because I
Mm.
want people to succeed and come in here with the right mindset and the right willingness to do what it takes to achieve success fast.
Let me dig into that with you because uh, you're the only way to build a team is talk to people. You're interviewing people who are looking at the company. You're doing warm market. In addition, Steve was a buddy of yours. Do you have staff that help you keep all of this organized? I assume so, but what does that look like?
Now I do.
Yeah, not
Really,
always, but yeah.
not always indeed. Like I do always say, as Xander knows, to my team, like invest in the business you want, not the business you have.
Ooh,
Um,
I'm gonna write that down.
business to me is most businesses are lost leaders, right? You put in more than you're getting out in the beginning. And if you're not ready for that, fine. Then maybe don't start that part yet. But I will say every single person at Symmetry that I've ever talked to, and Elijah, you've heard this time and time again, what's the number one thing you wish you've done differently? And this is to people that have agencies. They
Yep,
say, I wish I would have built sooner, right?
Yep.
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 You just hear it all the time.
It's
So
like compound interest, but with people.
yes, exactly. Exactly. Like I have no idea how we achieve those numbers, right?
Mm,
No idea, because you hit it on the head. I always talk about it in that same fashion. It's like the miracle of compound growth. I can't even calculate how and why we've grown so big with literally about the same amount of effort from me throughout. It's just numbers beget
mm.
numbers.
Xander, you got a question for him?
Yeah. I mean, so what are when you're interviewing someone, what are some, because I remember when you and I first talked, I was probably one of those longer interviews. I was sitting there kind of coming from, I'd taken a bit of a risk going from a super conventional, like big, well-known company on that 25 list that Symmetry's now ahead of in
Mhm.
Forbes, to a startup where I hadn't really, I developed a lot of skills, but the company wasn't starting up quite as much as we had hoped it would. And so I had a lot of questions. I was rapid fire to Mark, like, what kind of car do you drive? What, all these different things, trying to shoot holes. And really, I mean, Mark, you remember this. If I could have just taken what you were saying at face value and not questioned it so much, I would have gotten going a lot faster. I spent the first 3 to 6 months trying to shoot holes in the business model. And if by in doing that, I realized, hey, this isn't a scam, right? Like anyone can do this and you can make great money. But what are some things that you look for in a new agent to really that they might start going faster than someone else? They're going to see success faster. And for those that don't have that, how do you help curate that in them? Because anybody can do this. Whether you're a Walmart greeter or you're a, $500,000 a year, 9 to 5, not producer's not the word, earner. Like, how do you identify some of those characteristics, and how do you cultivate, or do you not cultivate? Do you mostly just look for people who already have some of those intangibles?
I will say, as much as I'd love to say that I'm this amazing shaper of people and all that, I hope that I bring impact to people every day. Um, there's almost like it's almost like Schrodinger's cat dilemma, in that I think both answers are correct. In that I have found that you really can't, as much as I've wanted to, it's very tempting and easy to fall into the trap of caring more about people's success than they do about doing what it takes to achieve their success.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that can be hard lessons learned early on when you're building an agency, because when I hire somebody, I want the very best for them, but I can't make them attend our morning huddles. I can't make them attend our non-negotiable trainings, right? I can't make them buy that plane ticket to Denver to go to our national conference and learn how to achieve a low to mid six-figure income in their first year. I can't make them do that.
Yeah.
And I never would. That's not who I am. I don't make people do anything. But you care so much that sometimes you find yourself spending too much time on the wrong people. And what I mean is, everybody's special, everybody's great, everybody's got their calling, but you don't know what you don't know. And some people are not, there's power in vulnerability, as Brene Brown says. And
Yeah.
so many people are not willing to be vulnerable enough to recognize that they're where they're at in life because of the decisions they've made to date. And the only way to change that is to make new moves, new decisions, apply the slight edge, right, each and every day, and just keep getting up. And so, Xander, to answer your question, what I do is I make sure that they are aware of what it takes to win here. You've heard it. I always like to, I'm a movie guy, so I compare a lot of things to movies, but I look at this as like Gremlins, right? If you ever seen Christmas classic Gremlins, uh, if not, watch it this season. But honestly, like, he gets his pet Mogwai, right? And there's only three rules. There's only three rules. No, they don't like bright lights. Don't get him wet, and don't feed him after midnight. Three rules, and you could just have this adorable little Mogwai for the rest of your life, right? But you see what happens when one of those is broken, right? Now all of a sudden there's gremlins everywhere, and the town's a mess, and people are being murdered, right? So same thing with symmetry. It's very simple, but it's not easy. So what I will do is I will give everybody the gremlins rules. I'll make sure they know them abundantly. Go to the conference calls, make sure you book your ticket for our next live training, and don't be a thermometer, be a thermostat, meaning there are no great days or horrible days. There's just days, and you just do the work, and the numbers will beget themselves. So that's what I do to cultivate people and hope to wake people up to the way I was awakened by really just starting to read our book of the month and apply what I read every day. On the flip side, I will say, if I'm advising builders, I've learned it's a unicorn event if you're able to change a human being, right? They have to change themselves. Just like there's no such thing as willpower, it's about environment, right? So I do my best to help cultivate in them the necessary environment for them to thrive, but I can't make them, right? So what I have found is, as I always tell producers, right, people that aren't building, we're in a work of service to these people, right? That we're calling. But until you can serve, you have to play the numbers game. So it's going to feel like sales at first. But the minute you connect with someone who desires what it is that we're offering, right? And follow our scripts and trainings and everything else, now you have a connection and an obligation to work with those people to find a comfortable fit for their budget and help them out. But as you guys know, that's a numbers game. Then you serve. Same thing with recruiting. It's a numbers game. And only when you find the right people willing to read, willing to show up, willing to work out loud, willing to fall down and make mistakes, now you've got the right person, right? And that's who you spend your time with. So, Xander, I loved your, I love how vulnerable you are because you were very, I'm going to poke holes in this. I'm not sure about this guy. I don't know if I believe this, but you always showed up to prove otherwise. And you did the work to test the system. And you showed up to conference without even knowing why it made sense to go to national conference. And you came out of there with a nitrous tank on your back because you finally saw and met
Yeah.
and it resonated. So I hope
Absolutely.
that wasn't too long-winded of an answer, but that's what it is. You got to play the numbers before you can make the impact.
No,
And
we're
it's
here
a,
for the long-winded answers.
yeah, I'm
That's why
I'm
you
so here
invited me.
for it.
Yeah.
What you're describing too, Mark, there's so many parallels between building and producing, both of which are a numbers game, both of which it doesn't happen instantly, both of which take a unique skill set that you have to develop. Most people aren't coming here naturally gifted at selling insurance and recruiting people to do the same. So let me ask you this. I mean, you're a top leader of the company. You just hit 130, which is the top contract level of the company, and you have somebody on your team who's about to do the same, which allows you to participate in the equity bonus, which is basically profit sharing. One of the cool benefits in our company is there's so many different ways you can make money. One of which is you build a business and then you get to share in the total company profits, which are massive. So let me ask you this. Are you being coached currently, or have you been coached up until this point, whether that be free mentorship that you get just from the environment and osmosis, or paid coaching? Like, how did you become the leader that you are? Because you didn't show up here as a 130. No, I don't think anybody does. But we grow into that, and there's levels to this. What did coaching look like for you, man? How could, because anybody can become one, but not everybody does. So how did you, how were you coached? What's your opinion on coaching? Let's dig
Yeah,
into that.
that's a great question. Yes, yes and no. Again, it's Schrodinger's cat. It's both answers because I've absolutely been, one thing I'm very thankful for, as you both know, we're in now I'm direct to symmetry, but I still consider myself part of the Cook hierarchy, right? So
Yeah.
Chris and Lauren Cook uh, are our hierarchy leaders. From day one, they have established the culture of building. And I just I'm just so thankful that I was birthed in that soil because I realize that symmetry, that's not everybody's agency, as they just kind of covered on our national call last Wednesday. So I've been very blessed to have been coached the big picture by Chris, the long game early on. And I'll never forget, where focus goes, energy grows. And I'll never forget one of my first live overviews in Indianapolis. Um, there was maybe 12 of us in the room, and Chris is standing there in front of a wetboard, and he's talking about the comp plan. And I'm sure most of us are definitely enjoying what can be made today if we make our dials. But he talked about equity partnership and what it looked like, and I've never turned back. I'll never forget him drawing that on the wetboard, equity partner. I mean, I remember it like it was yesterday. And I said, wait a minute. So it sounded like an infomercial. I'm saying, so you're telling me, Chris, that if I do this, this, and this, he goes, yeah. I said, I'm doing this. And I've never, that has always been on the forefront of my journey is I'm getting to equity partner. I
Mm,
am, 40 something. I have no 401k, no IRA, no savings, no nothing. This is my salvation. And
mm,
that's what I set my sights on.
yeah.
So I think that culture of building and that lit my fire. But I'll also say the coaching, yes, I've been coached. I'm coached every day by you, Elijah, by you, Xander, I'm not kidding. I'm coached by you guys every day, and by Joe Martinez, and by Jordan Gillum, and by, it's like the Wizard of Oz where, the lion needs this, the Tin Man needs that, the Scarecrow needs this. Everybody needs their different things, and at Symmetry, we have different people that, like Elijah, you were one of Xander's first calls because I said, I'm not the best producer. Elijah is. Please, Elijah, would you take a
I
few
remember.
minutes? Right? And I asked him to talk to Jeff Miller about metrics and schedule. And I asked him to pick Joe's brains about which leads to get. I'm not the best of any of these things. And what's amazing about symmetry is we're always being coached by each other, and the environment is cultivated in a way that you're always learning from everybody all the time. And
Hmm.
I may say something to Xander 10 times and it'll go in one ear, out the other. Um, but he could hear that once in a different way from Amber Blair or somebody like that, and he'll be like, "That's it, I'm in, I got it," right? So I think the real key is plugging in to the wealth of whatever IMO you're with. I mean, symmetry is the best. I'm just gonna say it. But if you
We're
decide to,
just the best there is.
we're just, but if
I
you want to
wake up every
experiment,
day.
yeah, you want some more practice companies before you eventually come to the, the best, then just be open-minded, be coachable, listen to those that have come before you that are not only doing as well as you hope to do and are striving to do, but also are the kind of people that you strive to be, right?
Hmm.
You don't want to be with, a jackass making X amount a year. And
Yeah.
you also don't want to be with the nicest, sweetest, most sensitive person on earth who's broke,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to find someone who's operating on all cylinders because one begets the other. If you're really living your truth and you're truthfully obliging yourself to a system that's put in front of you, then you're going to impact people. So you've covered the good person side of it. And as a result, the money is just a byproduct of how many people you impact in anything.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
why NBA players are making 30, 40 million a year because that many people are watching and enjoying them, right? And buying their
Yeah.
Mhm.
merchandise and everything else. So it's impact. And if you look at anybody on earth, nobody is both happy and earning a sustainable income without impacting people wide. And that
Mhm.
starts with an audience of one, and that's yourself and looking in the mirror and doing the right thing.
And I want to
That's good.
just, that's amazing. And I want to point out something that you said there, which I think is one of the reasons that you've been so successful as a builder is you're not trying to put up some facade of I'm the best producer, I'm the best builder, I know everything, you can only come to me. You're humble enough to be like, "Hey, I know about this, but there's someone else who could tell you even better. And so I'm going to point you in that direction and not, having such a tight, stranglehold on individual agents on your team. And that's just, it creates an environment where you're willing to be vulnerable. And then your agents do the same, right? Like I've had multiple people. It's kind of wild coming full circle. Like I remember the first time I called Elijah too. I was like, this guy's pretty cool. And now I've got agents reaching out to me about production, and I'm, trying to make sure I'm saying the right things. I'm like, I feel like I've just gotten here. I can't believe they now want my advice, and so I think that's so important to not, we keep coming back to ego as the enemy, right? And if you think that you're just the bee's knees, nobody else is anywhere close to your level, I don't think that resonates with people very much.
Mhm. You
That's
know,
right.
there's a scripture that says pride comes before a fall.
I
And
love
I think walking with humility, especially in leadership, like if you got people who are looking to you for help, and a lot of people who come into insurance don't know anything about insurance, and so you're the answer to the questions they have, you'll never go wrong. Uh, Leading with humility, leveraging the people around you, because you don't have to have all the answers to build a kick-ass business here, which
Yeah.
right.
I love. Mark, let me ask you this. So you've been here over 8 years now. It's not always been easy. The job has changed. The landscape is totally different. The way we do our job now couldn't look more different than it did pre 2020. All that being said, have you had any quitting phases? Have you thought about, man, insurance is kicking my tail. I gotta go look at something else. Or have you always been this committed?
It's funny. I just hosted Marty and Hillary Valor's call earlier this morning, and we talked about this same thing a little bit. Um, and both of you, thanks for what you're saying. I Marty was reading Think and Grow Rich, and it reminds me of the thing about Henry Ford in there, where Congress is, they're asking him all these questions, and he doesn't know any of the answers. But he said, "But somebody on my team knows the answers to every one of these questions, right?" So it's all about
Mhm.
leverage. It's who, not how. Love that book as well. So to answer your question, Elijah, you'll need to repeat it because I just lost my train of thought.
Have you ever had a quitting phase?
Thank you. Absolutely.
When was the last one? Because it's happened multiple times for me.
Mm,
It changes. Now I'll never quit, but there are days where I'm like, dang, it'd be easy to just have a job, you know?
oh,
Same.
same. I have to admit, even, you know, looked on LinkedIn for other jobs while I'm doing this, thinking, man, maybe a salary would be better than these off days or off weeks. But man, I'll tell you one thing I love that Joe Martinez, I mean, he deserves this quote because I know he coined it. I've never heard it before, but he says, look, this business is harder than you can imagine it will be in the beginning, right? It's harder than you think it's going to be, but it's more rewarding than you can imagine as long as you push through. And I love that. And I wish I would have heard it earlier. I might not have had as many quitting phases, but I love you, Joe. And that's what Joe says. And now I borrow that for anybody I hire. I just want them to know, like, look, this is you don't get riches for nothing. And what I love about this, before I go over my quitting phase, talking about basketball players earning 30, 40 million, we're listening. I listen to Conan all the time. I love Conan O'Brien, his podcast. Yeah, my sons and I are listening to one where he's interviewing Charles Barkley, and Barkley is always he's always speaking the truth. I'm very entertained by this episode, and he says, I got kids coming off the street all the time saying I'm going to be in the NBA. He's like, no, you're not. No, you're not. Like, do you know how tiny that window is? Like I got lucky. He's saying all this stuff, and I'm thinking, what's so incredible about our opportunity is he's right about the NBA, because
Hmm.
that takes a mix of everything to get in there. It's not just
Yeah.
skill, it's not just talent. Um, and and he said there's maybe, 30, 40, whatever, doing X amount. Here, it's a meritocracy, right? Anybody can get into the multi-million dollar territory if they just do the work and follow the system. And that's something that I really want to edify for anybody considering getting into this business. The reason there's a high rate of attrition in this business is really just people's egos get the best of them. People get in their own way, they give up, and they have a quitting phase and they actually quit, right? Or they rationalize. More importantly, the most dangerous thing that's at our disposal is our ability to rationalize and justify. And so you will never be at fault because your ego will protect you from that, right? Until you really start reading and growing, you're never gonna be at fault, because as Ed Milet and so many others have said, shame is about the worst of the worst. I don't think there's a lower emotion than you can feel than shame, right? And when you're getting rejected, as we do in this business or any line of sales, it's like, hey, instant shame. Get in line. You want to feel some shame? Get on the phones, right? Rejection and shame. But if you can flip it on its head, Xander, you said something so brilliant in orientation. Was it last night or Monday? About
One of the
flipping the
two.
script on rejection. Do you mind saying that real quick, and then I'll talk about my quitting phase. This was
Oh
brilliant.
yeah, yeah. So
Yes.
I can't take credit for this. I saw this when I was reading or listening to a podcast too. But this guy was like, if I'll flip the script on you as far as your opinion of hearing the word no. So if I told you that you were 25 no's away from getting $1 million, I give you $1 million, you get 25 people to go tell you no. How quickly would you go and get people to say no to you? And how excited would you be every time you got one? You'd be one step closer to that $1 million. And I think that's literally the industry that we're in.
It really is. And it's that simple. It's all about paradigm and how you look at things. And literally, guys, I just got a text while we're talking from one of our agents, Michael Mushlin, advanced market expert. He just got a $500,000 annuity approved by Security Benefit. So
It's a nice little
he's
payday.
That is awesome.
that's a nice little, at least $30,000 in his pocket for helping a family out. And I'll probably be on the other end of 6 or 7,000 while I'm doing a podcast. That's the power of building, and that's why I've never
Heck yeah.
succumbed
Heck
to
yeah.
a quitting phase. But I'll say yes, Elijah. I've definitely had my quitting phases. Um, I've I always let people know, like, this might be a little too specific because not every IMO is the same. But inside of Symmetry, we've got a series of ranks that you can merit yourself through at your own pace. No one can stop you. You can work your way up as fast as you like. And we have a point here called agency ownership, right? Where you will receive a new contract, agency ownership. It's willable, sellable, transferable. This is my legacy, right? I've earned agency ownership a couple years ago, and three or 4 years ago at this point. And I would say, as great as that was, I think the biggest valley in the journey at Symmetry anyway is between agency ownership and regional agency director.
Mm.
Because you fight, you swim, you grind, you struggle to get to agency owner, and you have won something, but you've only won the opportunity to grow something that's yours, right? And therein lies the real work. Whereas your mindset had you kind of prepped to feel like that's the end goal. Like, yes, I made agency ownership. Well, that's great, but it's only as big as you grow it from here, right? So the real journey to me, that all the rest of the stuff is just, elementary school, like getting ready for stuff. Now,
Mm.
university is post agency owner and getting to 130 equity partner. And yes, along the way, even after, and probably especially after agency owner, did I heavily consider at least 3 or 4 times maybe something else. Well, why is that? So we don't just scare everybody off to the hills
Yeah.
that might,
Yeah.
Yeah.
be looking at this. It's because any business is a grind. It's one thing to invest 100,000. I know it's way more than that, right? Like 500,000 into a Subway franchise or a McDonald's franchise or something like that. Well, if you've done that, I would hope you're going to do anything and everything to make that work, right?
Yeah.
And they've got a system just like we do to follow. The difference in this industry is you don't have to put up 100,000 or 500,000, right? You might have to put up a couple $100 a week for a couple weeks to get your feet moving. But it's the same lucrative potential as those front-loaded ones. So it's very easy to kind of be like, I'm having a tough week. I'm maybe this would be easier. But all that is, guys, every single wall you hit, every single quitting phase you hit is really, like in the rest of life, it's really just a calling to you to grow out of that problem. So you've just got to always be growing bigger than your problems, and know that if you're willing to do the work to do that and overcome that, then the rewards are just going to be massive. And if you
Mm.
stop there, right? Now, granted, you may quit because this genuinely, maybe your soul or whatever is just called against it. I'm not going to get all philosophical, but sure, there's people this isn't right for.
Yeah.
But if you've made it to key leader or agency owner, that's not the problem, right? If you have a quitting phase after that point, now it's a you thing, and it's a growth opportunity. And you've got to treat it as such and recognize it as an illusion. Like, when you have a quitting moment, it really says, wait a minute, you've got a huge opportunity here. You got a few tweaks that need to be made. Maybe it's just emotional strength. Maybe it's personal development. Maybe it's balancing out your investments among recruiting and building. But what I will say is, again, going back to what we have access to here, and that's other leaders, all of which who have suffered massive, agency losses or mishaps. I talked to, Ryan Federico, I guess this was earlier this year, an overview, and he said, "Wow, man, you're on the road to 130." He said, "How's it been?" I said, "Well, it's been tough, but it's worth it." And he said, "I'll tell you, I talked to Edward Pritchett, who of course Edward Pritchett is top in our company.
His
He
team
moved
does 60 million a year.
Thank you. 60 million a year, moved to Puerto Rico for tax purposes. That's a great problem, right? To solve. So, but he said Edward told him once, who just wrote a book, by the way, look it up on Amazon or otherwise, by Edward Pritchett, all about tax-free wealth. But Edward said, I don't know anybody in the company. Nice. Look at
There we
that.
go.
Tax-free
just
living by
just a quick plug, here. Tax-free
Yep.
living. Anyways, continue. Sorry.
Man, the myth, the legend. I love it. And Edward said, I don't know anybody who's made it to 130 without some kind of massive fallout or issue to overcome. And again, to me, it's the Willy Wonka of it all. It's the chocolate factory. It's a series of tests, and every test that you're willing to grow out of and pass is going to reward you exponentially. So have I had quitting phases? Definitely. Have I ever quit? Never. Will I? Never.
Yeah. Somebody told me early on the only way to fail here is to quit.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be great to start, but you do have to start in order to build something great. And
Love that.
it's dude, quite the journey you've had here. So let me ask you this. A lot of people look at hitting 130 or the top of the company. I've arrived. What are you working on, or what are you working towards? Like, what do you have like a big goal that maybe stands out that you're okay sharing for 2025? Or like, what are you focused on maybe day to day or week to week at the point that you're at in your business?
Oh yeah, man. I get to dream. I mean, again, I can't recommend enough just making a vision board. You guys probably can't see mine because I have my background. Now,
Yeah, I'm imagining it and it looks
how many times have
fantastic.
I tried to show this? So anyway, but right on there are my dreams. And yes, I look at, to me, reaching top contract, we have our training is called Summit because we liken the journey here to the climb to Mount Everest, right? And to climb Mount Everest, you require a Sherpa. You cannot get to the top by yourself. You need a Sherpa. And we have plenty of Sherpas here, right? We have people that will bend over backwards to help you. You've got your mentor, you've got their mentors. So we have our system laid out, and thankfully, and then you kind of become a Sherpa along the way, which is awesome. But likening, using that analogy, I look at this as I don't look at it as I do to some capacity look at it as I have arrived, but the only place I've arrived at is a rocky, craggy, steep climb that has led to, instead of a peak, I look at it as a foundation, a grounds, right? I don't want to call it plateau because we're going to grow from here, but it's like when I hate comparing us to Mafia, but it's like when Bugsy Siegel landed in Nevada, right? It was nothing. It was nothing. It was desert, vast desert. I love that movie. I'll always remember the scene from Bugsy with Warren Beatty when he's just standing there in the middle of nowhere, and nowhere. There's no airport. There's nothing there. And he goes, "We're going to build an empire." And they did. And look at Las Vegas now, right? So to me, what this allows is to have reached a place where I'm now in Nevada, in in that era, and now I really get to build my dream. Now I've got the foundation, the infrastructure, everything to make anything happen. Um, and for me, it's twofold. I'm going to recruit and build like never before. Xander and I just had an amazing recruiting huddle yesterday. We've got plans for big things this year as a result of that. We've got our Knoxville training event coming up March 4th through 6th. You guys feel free if you guys want to plug that with visuals or otherwise.
We should.
Yeah.
I think so because this is for anybody and everybody. Yes, it's one of the most important training events that we hold each year for our agents. This year, though, Knoxville, Tennessee, it is open to anybody and everybody that just wants to check out this opportunity, and be around us and other people like us. So if you hate us, don't come. If you kind of like this and want to learn and want to take a peek into the business, bring a friend, come on out to Knoxville, contact these guys and ask them how. Um, but that's what I'm most excited about is I've always treated this like a business, but I realize I have yet to treat it like a brand. And
Mm,
that's my next phase is this is no longer Mark Newbauer. This is a brand. It's a conglomerate of people and talents and opportunities, and we're gonna put heavy investment into recruiting this wide scale and just building this out. Um, I'm so excited now because I went from, getting the power shut off and producing and making an income to
mm,
now reaching the top contract. I'm more excited than ever because I'm going to build an empire.
yeah.
It's just do more of what we've always been doing. And then on
Mm,
the other side of things, what I'm most grateful for is, we own the rights to the Vampirella comic universe. I've got the rights to New York Times bestselling Wish by Barbara O'Connor, that we're going into production on in spring or summer of 25. Um, and we're doing studio pitches on Vampirella right after the holidays. We're going to the majors, Netflix, Max, Amazon, with a showrunner and a studio partner. So I'm just so excited to be able to be at a point where our agency is producing enough that I don't have to short my people of anything in order to give myself more time to focus on the media empire. And that's what's really magical about getting to this point is just really living that life that I've been sacrificing for that my family hasn't been able to enjoy to date. Well, now we're going to enjoy all that. Now we've got the
mm,
time, which is the greatest luxury of all, to do all of that in the same time that, maybe 5 years ago was spent smiling and dialing because that's what it takes to get there.
yeah.
Yeah, and Elijah kind of took it there a little bit of kind of like what gets you excited. It sounds like you've got a lot going on, and that kind of brings me to I wanted to ask, right? Like for the two of us, as I'm building a team, but still very heavily in the field. I got big production goals. What kind of challenges do you see as someone at your level? Because, for us, it's handling objections. I got to think about it. Someone, they needed the coverage, but we didn't end up helping them. Those are the things you're dealing with on the production side of things. I'd imagine, even though you're doing some production, like you've got a lot of agents doing production and you're leading them, like what are the things that you're dealing with at your level that maybe somebody who is brand new is going to transition into? Like you got different problems, right? And so I'm kind of curious what those are from the elevated you've kind of reached as you're talking about it, Nevada, right? So what are the issues that you have to deal with? I don't mean to bring us down, but I'm very curious about that.
Yeah, what a downer, Xander. No, I'm not even. No, I think I'm so excited, and I think that's a great question that I don't even know if I've fully explored because I'm still kind of basking in this recent promotion, for lack of a better term. But most definitely, um, scaling is going to be a challenge, right? Um, because I do plan to scale up rather quickly. And as everybody who's run a business knows, you don't want to scale up too quickly to where you're creating a sieve in certain areas. So scaling is definitely going to be a challenge. I want to start um, hosting our own retreats, right? Now is the time. The cook culture has been phenomenal, continues to be so. We're still going to be a major part of that. But I also feel some freedom and autonomy to slowly begin developing our own culture and retreat styles and things like that. So it's really it, it's it's really just finding and developing an identity, if you will, of this brand,
Yeah.
Mm.
of this company. And so I'm really excited to explore that, to do it in a way that harmonizes with everything we're doing inside of the um, hierarchy that gave us everything that has allowed us to grow the way that we have, while at the same time developing a level of autonomy and culture that is unique to, the empire that we're building. Um, and then of course balance is always a key. I mean, I've always remembered and kept in mind, Danny Young's wise words at one of my first conference was you can't ride one horse with two asses, right? And I love that. I'm sorry, no, you can't. I'm sorry, I messed it up because I'm not Danny Young. You can't ride two horses with one ass. That's what he
Yep.
said. And I've thought about that, and certainly I've paid the price for building two empires at once. I don't recommend it. Had I known better, I probably would have put Arowana and Mike the Pike, which are my media enterprise, probably on hold for 3 to 5 years while I really focused on this, right? But 2020 hindsight, I didn't. Um, so if I had a visual now, I would show Danny Young a picture of me with one leg on, the stunt guys where they're standing on two horses. That's essentially what's been accomplished here. So though I couldn't ride two horses with one ass, with proper balance, I was able to navigate two horses with one body, and that's gonna continue being um, I guess, a challenge so that because now I owe my family a lot of time as well.
Yeah.
And at
Mm.
the same time, I'm not stepping back. So it's
Yeah.
going to be about rearranging the day, hiring more admins, getting, getting in place an infrastructure which allows me to serve my family wholeheartedly for what so that we can reap the benefits that we have worked for, while at the same time putting energy, focus, and investment into the two very different businesses in order to have them thriving as my legacy. So while I'm here and while I'm not, um,
Mm.
that's the real
I
goal,
love it.
and those are the challenges.
Mm. Well, Mark, we've kept you for a while, and I so appreciate your wealth of wisdom,
I love you guys.
knowledge, stories. Like we might have to do a part two for this, Xander,
Yeah.
because I think we could keep on going. One thing I wanna talk briefly about, or get your take on, Mark. One of the incentives about insurance or building a team or selling is some of the really cool trips that we get to go on. A lot of the insurance companies will do these incentive trips, take you to places like Hawaii, Greece, Switzerland, Banff, Canada, Mexico, the Four Seasons in Whistler.
Elijah's
Uh,
been on.
I've not been on them all, but I've been on enough to know I want to be on the next one. Um, do you have a favorite trip? Do you have a trip that you're really stoked about for you and Gula to be able to go on?
I do. And if I can be really transparent here again without being a downer, I have to admit one thing that I do intend to focus more on in our business is yes, we have the luxury of all of these carriers hosting trips and creating contests to work towards the trips. What I didn't do enough of in my mind is we have access to so many carriers. I've often spread my business across carriers to the point where, as successful as I am here, I have never qualified for that many trips. Um, People on my team have qualified for several more trips than I have, and I'm proud to say. Um, that said, I have been blessed to qualify for some trips, which once you have a taste, as you know, Elijah and Xander too, we talked after Costa Rica. Um, I will say Costa Rica has been one of my all-time favorite trips because
Me too.
we all got to spend time together there. And what's funny is we're not retreating, we're not working, we're not, I mean, I did work off my patio a little bit because I could, but we all stayed in these amazing villas at this amazing resort in Costa Rica, wildlife everywhere, experiences and adventures abound at our fingertips. Um, and we all just associated. We hung out, we had fun, we didn't work. But what's crazy about these trips is the more you associate with other successful people, the more successful you become.
Yeah.
So though it may sound like a vacation, and it is, it's who you're vacationing with that ends up resulting in an X factor for your business upon return. And we just see that time and time again. And after my first taste, I've, I've since strived and have qualified for trips accordingly. Early on, I just thought, well, I don't, that's great. I can get a vacation when I make money. I didn't look at it correctly. I
Yeah.
just looked at it as a trip. I don't need a trip. I need to do this. I need to do that. Well, again, I'm the guy who's like, well, I don't need to read a book. I need to sell. Well, you'll never sell if you don't read and apply it. So same thing with the trips. If you don't go for a trip, if you don't work to qualify toward a trip, you're missing out on a big slice of something that can add rocket fuel to your journey here. So the, the trips are phenomenal. I mean, if you want to go to the material side of things, carriers will slap you with 1,000, 5,000 in spending cash when you arrive. There's gift bags in the room. The Cabo trip recently had butler service in the rooms. All inclusive, just gourmet, Michelin style cuisine. Like, what's not to love, right? But
Yeah.
what's amazing is, again, and what's so amazing about Symmetry, I don't know, because I've been courted, I've been asked, I've been, attempted seduction, right? But I've never left Symmetry. I never would, because it's the best. And
Attempted
He's faithful,
seduction.
y'all.
yeah, and because what I know is Edward Pritchett, who's doing $60 million a year, Xander and I can go to national conference in Denver, see Edward in the hall, and say, Edward, can I ask you a question? And Edward will
Mm.
stop everything and look
Yeah.
you in the eye and spend as much time as long as you're asking worthwhile questions, right? And all that
Hmm.
stuff. He will spend as much time as necessary, give you his contact information, and you've
Yeah.
just made a multimillionaire friend.
Yeah.
Who, where else can you go? Dot dot
Literally.
dot. I could just fill in
Literally.
that with everything, but where else can you
Dude.
go where all you've got to do is get to our events and be in proximity to so many successful people, multimillionaires, people making big impact. Like I said, Jimmy Spieldiner, post-mortem, God bless him. His
Yeah.
agency, he was an agent
It's
of
great.
our in Symmetry. He passed away,
Yeah.
stage 4 colon cancer. But before his passing, he and Brian Delaney went to Africa on a $75,000 month-long safari, and he is now post-mortem building villages in Africa for
Because of the
people
business.
because
Dude,
of the business. His family is taken care of because of the business. Cecily
it
Newsom
doesn't stop.
using her real estate to build affordable housing for low income people in her community with her. I mean, people at this level are impacting the world in so many ways that have nothing to do with insurance. And that, to answer the previous question, is what I'm so excited about, is to use my gifts,
Mm.
my talent, my passion for entertainment because I see entertainment as something that's transcendent. Everybody has a movie or a TV show that has made a significant impact in their life. As silly as that may sound, it's that message, right? It's that thing, it's that hero that maybe you're like, man, if Will Smith can do it in Pursuit of Happiness, then and that's a true story, right? So can I, right? Things like that. So
Mm.
I'm really excited about, building this business so that I can use my love for storytelling to impact and influence people in a transcendent way while entertaining all the while.
That just
Yeah.
puts such a nice bow on things and ties into other parts of the conversation. Like the biggest thing for me was before coming into Symmetry was like, a lot of my network, we would it'd be Friday night, Saturday night, we'd be at some bar somewhere, packed in like sardines, and the main conversation is, this place sucks. Like, where should we go next? You can barely hear each other. And I was like, I haven't earned the right to go be spending my time like this. And I didn't feel like I was in the right place. I wasn't getting anything out of those conversations. And to your point, Mark, like in Costa Rica, I got to play golf with Elijah and Chris Cook, and there's still people having a good time, enjoying themselves, but the conversations that you're having are just different. And
Mm.
I don't, you did a great job, sharing some examples, but like it is just different when you're around other people who are building something, leading with service. And gratitude doesn't even begin to describe the way I feel about this company and the people that I've had the pleasure of meeting, and the service that we get to provide to the families that we help. So,
Same.
I think the insurance industry, to wrap it up too, because the purpose of this podcast is to dive into all things insurance, whether that be sales, building, leadership, recruiting, systems, all of that. And if you're in sales or you're an entrepreneur or maybe you're just dissatisfied, the insurance industry is, I said this on the last episode, it is not a get rich quick scheme. It's a get rich slow business. It's like a crock pot business in a microwave society. We're not trying to sell you a course, but if you're wanting to change your life, this could be the career path that gives you kind of the sandbox with the tools to build something that aligns with your why and your vision. And maybe you heard Mark and you're like, dang, I want to work with this guy. Mark, how do people reach out to you? If you're cool sharing, I wouldn't drop your phone number, getting some wackos reaching out to you, but what's the proper way for people to reach out if maybe they're interested in vying for a spot on your team?
I'd say talk to Xander Wally. He can be
I love it.
Enough said. Enough said. Well, Mark, thank you so much for being on here, dude. I can't wait to see
Yeah.
how this turns out. When we post it, we got an hour and a half of free game. Learning from somebody who has with a machete charted a path through the freaking jungle with
Yep.
no prior experience. He's involved in other businesses. He's a family man. He doesn't compromise his integrity. And one thing I love about you, Mark, is you're a constant student of the game. Like never ever when I hear you talk do you come off as I've arrived. I'm the sage with the know all be all. Like you're in the crowd taking notes, man. And I love that about you. But um, before we bounce, are there any like last minute tips that you would give to maybe somebody brand new looking at insurance? What would you say to them in 30 seconds if you had 30 seconds with them?
Gosh, just do it. Just do it. I mean, it's why I don't know. Again, I just hosted Valors, so I don't know what I've said here and what I've said there. It's all jumbled together. But for instance, I've never grown and learned so much. I had a blast at film school, right? I mean, you get to go to, I went in Chicago, I get to go to Grant Park and shoot films and help other people shoot their films, watch movies, take notes. It was a blast. But I've never learned more and grown more than I have at Symmetry. So, for instance, my oldest is 17. Billy turns 18 in May. He's going to Symmetry University. I mean,
Come on, baby.
this is what he's doing, right? And so I believe in this full force. It will change you for the better if you let it. This industry, and again, if you're with the right IMO, with the right business model, you're in a meritocracy, and you can earn and grow as much as you desire. No dream is too big. I really mean that, and that I, it's far. It's a such a contrast. I know I'm way blasting through your 30 seconds, but it's so Xander knew I would do that. But it's so important. It's so important to recognize that you have to start in if you've never done this before, it's going to feel like you're starting in the coal mines. I mean, you're dialing old leads. You're getting told no way more than you're getting told yes. You're investing in leads with maybe without a return for your first couple weeks, right? But we have people that even at worst have taken 2 to 3 months to get the hang of this and finally start generating an income. And they're now top leaders in Andrew Jimenez on the advisory board, top contract in the company, right? So it's like you just have to have the good faith to know that this industry is really just a widget. If you want to be the best insurance agent and insurance agency in the world, great. Well, that's obvious. But if you want to be the best anything else, restaurateur, um, make your own products, whatever, right? Symmetry is the widget. It's the vehicle to get you there.
Mm.
I shouldn't say symmetry, but I did because it's the best. But guys, this industry is flexible, it's lucrative, and if you simply apply yourself and obey the metrics and honor your calendar, there's nothing you can't achieve. And so I would say number one is never give up. And number two, if you have another dream outside of the world of insurance, go somewhere that has a program that allows you to build an agency and earn true agency ownership so that you can, in the matter of 3 years on the fast track, and you better be a grinder if you're going to do that,
Yep.
to 7 years on the 5 to 7 years on the no-brainer path, um, to do whatever you want,
Yeah.
right? So if you're a real estate investor, do this, right? Because you will not, that's why I love this. I've had to go to investors, guys. I can't tell if I can just say one thing, how these two things. I had the rights to in our other business, we had the rights to a book written by George R. R. Martin, right? The
Mm.
Skin Trade. It's a werewolf novella. Fell in love with it. George is an angel. I've learned so many lessons in ownership of this property while we had it. Well, George Martin, for those that don't know, is the creator of Game of Thrones. I got the rights to the Skin Trade a few months before Game of Thrones was greenlit by HBO. So
Wow.
didn't mean a thing when I got it. It was just a short story. I managed to navigate the rights. I got it, and then all of a sudden it turned into the Hope Diamond for us.
Wow.
And it was just the lesson learning property of all time because we ran into I won't even say the names, but just low frequency people, right? Trying to get a piece of it. Um, and we had to deal with HBO. We had a pilot order. We had everything you could imagine. And it was all squelched by some low frequency money people that don't understand the business, that wanted to be the guy, and it ruined the whole project. And it'll be
Mm.
it was one of my biggest regrets of my life, but it all ultimately became the biggest gift in terms of knowing what not to do, who not to deal with. And now Symmetry has allowed me to finance my company to a degree where we'll never have to deal with that type of scenario ever again. And
Mm.
proud to say we have some projects that rival that in terms of size and scope that we get to work on. And it's because of what I've learned and who I've become at Symmetry and the opportunity to create massive passive income, as Jamie Susie Nienabar likes to say. I'm now at that point, and we get to enjoy it, and we get to, the parable of the talents, right? Or the 8 bags of gold. That was the golden book that I read. That was the parable of talents, and I want to make the most of this gold now, and I want to impact as many people as we can.
Mm.
Heck yeah.
I love it.
Well, Mark, thank you so much for being so generous with your time. You're riding two horses with one ass, right? Like we know how busy you are, and just to the audience, probably gonna need to listen back to this more than once to get all the nuggets. But drop us a comment, let us know what you liked, what you want to hear more of, and just Mark, thank you. We can't tell you how much we appreciate you.
Thank you guys so much for this honor.
Thank you, Gabe.
Love you guys. You're always inspiring, and thanks for having me on today.
Right back at
Anytime.
you.
Anytime. Next Friday, episode 4's dropping. Xander's going to be in Peru when we record that just for fun. And I'm not sure what we're going to get into yet, but it's going to be tough to top this episode.
Yeah, it's gonna be an uphill uphill climb, but we'll figure it out.
I
Well, you
appreciate you,
get to talk
Mark.
about Peru when you get back. What may I ask? I mean, where are you going in Peru? You going to see the Amazon? You got family down there? What are you doing in Peru?
Ayahuasca trip for sure.
Yeah,
It's with my family. We're going to Cusco, Lima. I know we're going to see Machu Picchu. It's a
wow.
bucket list thing for me. So I'm not totally sure. I wasn't super involved in the planning. I'm just going to be riding it out, and pretty cool that I can continue to do my job as I like while I'm there.
That's awesome.
Hmm.
Well, to Elijah's point, bring us back some plant medicine, and have a wonderful time. That's awesome, dude.
All right.
Thank you
Appreciate
both
it,
so much.
Mark. See you
Take care.
guys.
Everybody have a
Everyone have a good
happy
one.
Christmas, happy holidays. We'll see y'all next week.
Sounds
Likewise.
good.
Happy holidays, guys.
All right. Bye bye.